Hello there. My name is H.J. Cronin. I am an author of crime, horror, and fantasy, and this is my YouTube channel, Facts of Fantasy. I'm once again joined by the Geeks of Power, our amazing fantasy panel, to talk about controversial show Rings of Power. We're on episodes 3 and 4 at the moment, so we've done two at a time due to time constraints. We got Trevor,
Hello.
Jack,
Hello.
and Rich.
Hello there.
So we're going to talk about episode 3 and then episode 4. First of all, my own personal opinion is what the fuck has happened with this $1 billion series. Honestly, I am so disappointed and really not enjoying myself. I find myself bored. Um, I'm I've stopped looking at watching it as a Lord of the Rings show, as a Middle Earth show, and trying to watch it as a fantasy, and I'm just really not enjoying it. I think my major bugbear, which we'll get into, is Numenor and Galadriel. There's a protagonist that I just can't get behind. I don't like her. She's narcissistic. She's a bit mad. She's not nice. She's not likable. She's not got many redeeming character like features about her. So I'm just not enjoying it. So episode 3, we get introduced to Numenor, and at first we're on the boat with the Playmobil-looking Numenorians with their Playmobil-looking armor. Weren't too keen on that, but as the boat was sailing, I thought that it was quite beautiful. I thought the setting was amazing. You had the big statues. I don't know if they've got a name, Jack or Trevor. I don't.
It's Elros, I believe, the big statue.
Yeah,
Minotaur, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I thought they're absolutely gorgeous. It's like the boat's going through and Galadriel like introduces Numenor, and I thought it's a bit soon because we've already getting used to 3 plot lines and all the characters we've already seen. But it looked lovely nonetheless, and then it pans out and you see Numenor and sort of remind me of Gondor in Lord of the Rings, but this is sort of an ages past, the glory days, the high days, and I thought that was fantastic until we actually land on Numenor and start meeting these supposedly 8-foot men who are meant to be great warriors when Harabrand ends up taking out 3 of them on his own. And just things like that. The Queen Regent, I really didn't like. I thought she was just not realistic. Like, they hate the elves and they really made a point of they don't like the elves or trust the elves or want the elves around, don't need the elves. And it's not really it's really explained a little bit why, but it just feels like just to add tension for the sake of it when there is no tension. And I just really didn't like Numenor, as you can tell. I really enjoyed Elendil, though. I think he's my favourite thing about the Numenorians. He's a pretty cool character. Um, his children, on the other hand, Isildur or Issy or
Oh,
Isil,
don't,
they
Ugh.
shortened his name.
And fake, not real sister
And fake but not real sister who's going on dates, but who gives a shit?
with Roman boy who's like Octavian. He looks like Octavian in the series Rome on Netflix.
that comes along in episode 4.
Well, I thought he was a very handsome lad. That's I'll say
Oh.
that now. So,
Well,
so,
you
so
would.
if the actor's listening, he'll know there's at least one guy carrying a candle from. So that's good.
But yeah, so in in episode 3, we're introduced to Isildur, and I was fascinated by Isildur in the Fellowship of the Ring in the beginning. And when I see him, I'm like, Jesus Christ, who's this pussy? Like, this can't be Isildur. Like, Jack sort of helped me out there and said that he could get rough and ready as time goes on, as battles pass, etc. But he just looks way too primed, like way too like I can't even describe it. He just doesn't look like a badass. Like, his dad Elendil looks pretty cool, looks pretty decent, but yeah, it's just introducing him for the sake of it, and I really didn't think there was a point of doing that. It's too much. They just look like any other. They just feel like any other sort of human civilization. I remember the Rohan in Two Towers. Like, within a few minutes, they've established this entire new human culture, and you feel them, you get what they're all about, etc. they're not generic. Like they're obviously based on historical cultures, but you get the feel that they're different. Same with Gondor. And
one thing I wanted to add, Hamish, about you said the armor looked a bit like Playmobil.
yeah,
But I do think they have consciously modelled it off the armor that Aragorn wears at the end, of Return of the King, which does have something like that. I think that's the kind of angle they're going for.
yeah. I think
No,
I
they're
meant
not.
I meant I
I
think
don't see, he's not in scale armor at the end.
No,
The
I meant like the
Marine
design on
armor.
the breastplate. That's what I was thinking of.
yeah, I get what you're saying. But the marine armor, I mean, like when they pick when we first
Oh, right. I see what you mean.
Isildur,
Yeah.
it's just terrible.
Well, they're going down the whole. They're giving them a Greek feel, aren't they? It's the Atlantean feel. I mean,
Yeah.
Tolkien wrote Numenor with Atlantis in mind, I think.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just looked very bland for such a rich culture. But I get what you're saying.
I think I know why. I think I have a suspicion why. Because we're not going to spend too long in Numenor.
Thank God.
Well, no, but I think if you think of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, the sets where they're going to be spending a lot of time, they have a lot more detail. But I suspect because this is possible, we're not going to see that much more of Numenor because it's all going to the action will be shifting to Middle Earth, so you'll perhaps see more
Yeah.
complex sets and a bit more
I
set
don't know.
dressing and stuff.
That's where
I mean,
they're
I don't know about that, Rich.
that's my suspicion. That's my suspicion.
I think we'll probably be in Numenor for a little bit. They can't destroy Numenor in 4 more episodes.
No, but I don't
Yeah.
think. I think they want to focus on the Numenorians interacting with the elves in Middle Earth, and I think
they'll
the-
probably
the-
revisit it at some point.
well, yeah, because what's his name is still there because
Yeah.
he
So Halbrand.
Halbrand.
I really like him. I actually really like him as well. I forgot to mention him.
Well, we actually got some character development for him, so yay.
Yeah, I quite like him. So that's enough from me about Numenor. I'm just going to quickly add about the 2 more things on the episode. You've got the Harfoots. I really weren't enjoying the Harfoots either.
Oh, it's scandalous, scandalous. It's
I
best bit.
think- I can't even put my finger on it. I think I'm enjoying the mystery man a little bit. At the end, he's helping them carry the train, and I'm just not feeling these guys. I think they're there for the sake of it, and they're just I really can't put my finger on it, but I just don't like them. I don't. They're singing this song about we're all together or something at the end, and then they're going to leave this family behind. Like I didn't understand, and I just think it's there for the sake of it, and I hope it does go somewhere, but I'm really not enjoying it. I'm bored by it. Lastly, probably my favourite bit is the orcs and Arondir. In episode 3, it's when they're captured. They're in the prison camp, aren't they? The trench that they're digging for.
Yeah,
the orcs.
they're
Am I
digging.
correct? Yeah.
Essentially, they're digging the foundations for Mordor. For Barad-dûr.
Yeah, I thought everything with them was fantastic. I liked. I didn't understand how they captured the other elves. Like they didn't really mention that. But it sounds like there's orcs everywhere, and they're just raiding everywhere, causing havoc. But we're not quite getting the scope of that in the show, which is quite annoying as well.
But they kind of mentioned it, didn't they? They say that certain villages were empty and there was something going on. And I think that was the implication. But you're right, it hasn't been. If they said 5 and 6 villages are all empty, that would be. But they just said, just the next door one. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't quite know.
You know, like just a brief conversation between him and the other elves. How did you get here? And for them to be like, "Oh, we came looking for you in the woods, and then we got stepped upon." Just any of that would have really been like, you'd just be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, well that makes sense." Because I struggled to understand how armored elves with bows and weaponry were able to be overcome and disarmed by orcs. I mean, he got caught in the dark by himself, so you can sort of understand where you see it happening. I've no idea how they managed to do that at all.
Yeah, same here. And they're warriors. They're guards.
Yeah, I think one of the criticisms I've seen has been there's too much going on off screen that we should be seeing.
Yeah,
Which-
100%. They could have taken their time and
Yeah,
like,
pacing.
stuff.
It's pacing.
But I was going to say the practical effects for the orcs, fantastic. That's some of the
Yes.
best stuff. That's really good. It's I would say from what we've seen of them, it's almost on a par with stuff in I think at the end of that bit when you finally see them at the end of I think is it the Fellowship.
Yeah,
When you get those really horrible close-ups.
yeah, I really like the orcs. I think the orcs are fantastic. And I liked the ending when Adar, is it? They call him
Adar, yeah.
Yeah, when he's walking, it's sort of blurry and you don't quite know what it is, and we find out more in episode 4.
I actually liked the teaser
really
they did after that because they still didn't show his face. It just had R&D going, "Who are you?" As if it was genuinely surprised. I like that.
So I really like Arundel. He's the only character that's gripping me until the end of episode 4, but we'll go into that. So who would like to give it a rundown next? Trevor, I'm sure you're itching to get at it.
Oh, okay.
10 out of 10, Trev, isn't it? 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, Numenor, the graphics sequence, fantastic. It's really good. And I mean, I keep sort of seeing how much they've spent on this show, and I can't help but feel they have suffered from not using the blue harvest effect, which, if there's anyone not familiar with the term, when George Lucas was making Return of the Jedi, they actually used the title Blue Harvest because it was people going, "Oh, you want to hire this or buy this for the Star Wars movie? We're going to triple prices." And it's just even like talking about the armor and how things look. I just feel that Amazon have been ripped off. They've been ripped off because they're doing things, or they've been purchasing things for the Lord of the Rings show. So everyone who's probably involved or supplying things for it are going, "Okay, this is a golden ticket. Let's ramp up our prices." And I just feel that there are sequences like the Numenor sequence, which just like that's a fantastic sequence. That you see sort of that this is the heritage from which Gondor, Minas Tirith is based on. And it's one of those things they got absolutely right. They nailed it. But then we get the actors in, and it's just, for me, it's, as I say, this is from someone who knows that Galadriel was meant to be really tall. She's like
Yeah.
a good foot shorter than all the Numenorians, and it's just like, oh, how can they be doing this? Peter Jackson mastered the art of camera trickery to sort of, with a lot of the scenes when like Gandalf is engaging with Ian Holm as Bilbo and stuff in the Fellowship, and that no special effects, just camera trickery, and it's just sort of they've bitterly disappointed. I mean, I haven't got such an issue with the armor. I think that's okay. You don't want big heavy armor if they're like the sea is always right and they're at sea, because if you're in too heavy armor, you're gonna sink like a fucking lead balloon. But I agree with you, Hamish. It's Elendil is the most intriguing character for me of the Numenorians. I don't mind the Queen Regent being a little bit offish. That's okay. Halbrand, Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, as I consider him, is one of those characters you want to see more of. I agree with also Arundia is carrying the show for me, and at this stage, that isn't Galadriel, that isn't Elrond, that is this Galadriel, this Elrond, this second age, because they're just bitterly disappointing. I will watch the show to the end of the first season, but it's disheartening as a lifelong Tolkien fan. It's there's good bits. There are good bits. And as you say, this Galadriel is an appalling character. You can't relate to her in any way. It's bad writing. I'm don't have anything else to say at the moment.
Not the biggest fan then.
Oh,
So, Jack, an even bigger fan.
It's going to be another 10 out of 10, Jack, isn't it?
Then
You're
we-
loving it every minute.
Then we'll go on to the fanboy.
so I was just to say, I'm relying on Rich to lift us up.
Yeah. So look, I just want to start by saying that if people are enjoying this series and they're enjoying what they're seeing, then that's absolutely great. And hopefully it inspires people to buy the books and read into the lore and, you know, fall in love with it the way that we have over the years. But I just find myself when I rewatch it or I think about it, you know, I've watched each episode and come out and been like, yeah. And then I've actually sat down and had to think about it and rewatched it and been like, oh, for God's sake. And there's just so much that I can't get on board with anymore. Like the CG island of Numenor, for a start. Like everybody said, oh, it looks so fantastic. Everything's visually stunning. But how many times are we going to hear it's visually stunning before people get sick of saying it?
It's not enough, is it? It's not
No.
enough.
And I'm done with it already. I was done with it with Numenor.
Mm.
And then and I was like, well, it looks good, and you can see the foundations of where Osgiliath and Minas Morgul, Minas Tirith have come from, and you know that's all lovely. Until I just feel like we're walking through an episode of Rome when we go into Numenor, and there isn't that much differentiation really between the Numenorians and the men of the Southlands or the elves or the dwarves. They're all wearing togas, all of them. And then Gil-galad is wearing togas as well. So I'm looking at the elf fashion and the men of Numenor fashion and not seeing much differentiation. And I think, Hamish, you touched on that earlier where, you know, you can tell the difference between the men of Rohan and the men of Minas Tirith by their fashion and the way they stand, the way they hold themselves and the design work. And I'm not really seeing that with it. I mean, Numenor looks great as you're coming into it. I'm not too bothered by Tal Miriel, actually. I think she plays it the way I had imagined Tal Miriel would have done, because she's sort of sitting on top of a pyramid that's crumbling below her, and on one side you've got the faithful, and on the other side you've got like the king's men that, you know, believe that Melkor is the true god and that they should really have immortality for themselves. So I think she's trying to playing it cool, and trying to sort of appease everybody to stop there being another civil war, because we're at the late end of the Second Age. I know they're trying to explain it as this is the whole Second Age. It's fucking not. It's the late end of the Second Age, and there's already been a civil war in Numenor where they pushed out the faithful, and the faithful live in the west. So Tal Miriel plays that well, but you know that bit where she says to Elendil. First of all, she should know who Elendil is, because Elendil was like her third or fourth cousin. He's not just some minor lord. He's like her family, and you know they live hundreds of years, Numenorians. So she should know who he is. She shouldn't have to ask. But when she's like, "Your name, Elendil, what does it mean?" and he's like, "Elf friend," and she's like, "Ah, and are you a friend of the elves?" Her name is Miriel. Like, and they said this in Men of the West. It's like her name is Miriel, and the first Miriel was the elf who gave birth to Fëanor, who forged the Silmarils. So she should know that. And that's just, you know, just an aspect of where the writing is poor. It is poor, and you know, people are getting upset about poor writing, and I completely agree with them now, because when I first watched this series, I first heard about the series, I thought, you know, my biggest gripe, as you all know, was the dwarf women aren't going to have beards.
Minor issue now, isn't it?
Yeah, I've completely forgotten dwarf women don't have beards. I'm now looking at it being like, why did you say Isil to Isildur? That's just this is Holly. They've turned it into Hollyoaks in Middle-earth, and I just don't want Hollyoaks in Middle-earth. If I want a modern TV series, I will watch a modern TV series. You watch things like Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones for escapism, to get away from the modern stuff.
Yeah, exactly that.
And that's what they've done. And so that Numenor's, it looks great, fine, you know. And there's some nice little Easter eggs in there. I mean, that's in the next episode mainly. I liked bits with Elendil, although he's not really just a captain of a ship. He's like a high lord. He's a highborn lord and leader of the faithful. I'm not sure why they're sort of playing him as he's going to be the reluctant leader of the faithful, which is what they did with Aragorn's character in Lord of the Rings. that scene on the horse, that slow-mo shot on the horse. What the hell were
Oh,
they
my
thinking?
God.
Why?
Forgot to mention
Why?
I'd
Why on
forgotten about
earth would
that.
you? How are we gonna let's make this look really majestic. Let's get a close-up of Morthac Clark's face while she's riding in slow motion. I mean, jeez. Yeah. So there's so many eye-rolling bits, but you're right. Like Arondir is.
Do you think for that horse, that bit they were sponsored by NatWest or something?
Yeah. Or is it Barclays?
No, it's
Lloyd's.
NatWest.
Barclays with the horse Lloyd.
Lloyd's.
Not
Lloyd's.
NatWest, Lloyd. Yeah.
Got there in the end.
Yeah, got a Scottish Widows advert or something. And yeah, so I cringe every time Galadriel comes on screen now. I'm like, oh well, what is she going to say and do now? Because I know that there's this character arc and people saying they're going to defend it, but I'm already done with that character arc now because she's not a likable character.
No.
Are we gonna talk about Galadriel a little bit later, or
Yeah, we can go into Galadriel later.
okay, we'll go into
You're
that
about
later.
you're about to talk about Arondir.
Yeah, so Arondir, I'm loving his storyline. It's really they've fleshed that out really well. It's going at a nice pace that that is enjoyable. It's not, I dislike that there's some stuff going on in the background that he's not aware of, like when you turn up and the elves are all captured for whatever reason we don't really know. But I'm liking him. I think he's really really strong in this, and I'm enjoying watching him. The Harfoots, well, first of all, they're psychopaths. Like they're absolutely brutal. I'm falling out of love with them now. I mean, I think their storyline is a little bit pointless, to be honest. I'm sure the writers have done a really great job, sort of moving this along so that it will all make sense. Just keep watching, but I just kind of feel like it's just not needed in any of it, which is a shame. But I like how they're done. I've always said I like how they're, like when they were hiding in the first couple of episodes, and you can see how well they are at sort of staying away from the big folk. That's all good. I am intrigued by the stranger because obviously it's a made-up character, so we don't really know who he is unless it turns out to be Gandalf, which I'm not going to put it past the Rings of Power crew to do that.
Yeah.
But if I missed anything else out, I don't know. I think I have on the recap.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Cause
yeah, 5 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's generous, Jack. I would have given that a 3 or 4, literally just because it looked good.
Wait till I get to the next one.
Yeah, that's the thing. What you said, like, it doesn't matter. Like, sometimes costumes and like sets and all that. It's okay for a few seconds, but then it's really the story that's got to drive you forward and make you want to watch it. It doesn't matter how good it is, or it doesn't matter who's cast as what character, etc., etc. It's just how it's played out and how it all goes. That's what sticks with you longer, and that's what they're failing at massively.
Well, yeah, it's like little bits, right? So little things that start to niggle at you, and you're like walking down the road. Oh, it's one drop of rain. It's only one drop of rain. Then you keep walking. Oh, it's 2 or 3 drops of rain, but that's fine. And then suddenly it's a rainstorm, and that and that's what it's feeling like now. It's starting to go down the line. The first 2 episodes we watched, it was intriguing because we're like, oh wow, we're back in Middle Earth. Oh, lovely! Look how stunning it is. Oh, beautiful. Oh, look, there's so much stuff from the old lore, and now we're into the second age where we're now sort of going, oh well, what's going on here? Why have they done that? Why aren't the men of Numenor huge, mighty men? Because so far they've just been battered by middlemen. Halbrand just does 4 of them, and then gets surrounded by Numenorian spearmen who look really scared to be holding spears at him. And I'm thinking, you guys are like brutal. Sauron is terrified of Numenor, and you guys are shaking because of one lowborn man or like lesser man. It just they've got it off there.
They're literally just an island of racists that can't fight and complete pieces of shit. Rich,
yeah, they're
what do you
ready
think?
for the Trump rally.
Right. Well, okay. So let's start off with the negatives and move on to the positives. Because I'm not going to be wholly positive about it because, as I say, I am enjoying the general vibe of it. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I'm not going to pretend in any. I'm not going to be a stan for, Rings of Power. But for intents and purposes on this podcast, I am. But what I will say is that there isn't enough drama in Numenor. Where is the conflict? The conflict hasn't been written strong enough. There clearly is some conflict between the elves. Why? We don't know. It's not been emphasized where the big sort of disgust and sort of fear and why is there sort of this sort of disregard for the elves. Clearly there is it, but we're not really clear why. So that would have been something that should have been stronger. And I think that Isildur, the guy's doing very well, but he's got nothing to work with, the actor. You know, he's doing the best he can with the sort of very, very thinly drawn character. And I think they would have been better spending more time on him than on his sort of his children. I know they want to have them in there, but it's it is.
Wait, you mean Elendil, not
Elendil. Elendil Isildur is his son. I mean, Isildur is son again, very thinly drawn again. There isn't enough depth there for him to work with. You know, they're doing their best, which is what's holding it. And certainly the people who are playing them are really working hard on tissue thin sort of characters. Which is, I think that's the issue. Where's the conflict? And I think that Numenor didn't look lived in enough. It was too immaculate. I mean, yes, it's meant to be this. It was too immaculate. I mean, yes, it's meant to be this Atlantean perfect city and so on, but it just didn't look lived in enough. Even the best cities in the world look lived in. It looked like it was built, like last year as opposed to hundreds of years ago, which is what it's meant to be. Was it thousands, Jack? I think it's certainly very, very old.
Well, Numenor's about probably over 2,000 years old.
So it doesn't look that old. I think it doesn't have that lived-in feel to it, which is a shame. The Queen, liked her for a game, but again the character thinly drawn, which is a shame. So that's a lot of the negative stuff, that the characters, that they don't have enough to work with. There isn't enough sort of depth there to really get into the, why should we care, to make us care about their motivations. I think that's their motivations aren't clear enough. They're mentioned, but they're not clear enough. I think is the issue with them. But again, the sets and the armor stuff, I don't have too much problem with. Aside from the lack of lived-inness, as it were. But that's all right. I mean, you can make do with that if the actual, the motivations and characters had been stronger. But we'll have to see how that pans out. Halbrand again should be a much stronger character, but again, he's very thinly drawn. We need where's his backstory? What's going on with him? I think we need a bit more of that to really sort of care. And why did he decide to stay? As we'll see later on, but that's not clear. But Harfoots, right? Okay, so I'm a big sort of fan of hobbits and Harfoots, so we've already established this. And yes, there is some questionable stuff about how they behaved, so I wonder the direction they're going to go in is that the Harfoots decide that this is a cruel way to live their lives, and maybe we should settle down. They're probably going to do some stuff with the law that is going to make Jack extremely cross. I suspect that by the end of the series they're going to land in the Shire or something like that, or something, and we shall stop being cruel to each other. I think that's probably what they're going to do, which will no doubt make Jack apoplectic with rage.
I think it will be Gandalf that suggests that if the stranger is Gandalf, I think it's going to be Gandalf suggests they lay down their roots and create the Shire, and that will be their explanation for why Gandalf is so fond of the Shire.
I think that's probably what they're going to do. But having said that, I still like the characterization of them, and at least their motivations are more interesting. You know what I mean? You're clear that they have different sort of angles on things, and this is how we survive. And they're meant to be nomadic, and the only way they can survive and keep away from the big people is by being nomadic. And if they stay in one place, they'll be caught, or something terrible would happen to them, so they cannot stay behind. I think that's how they survived and not be seen by other people. But they should have said that, which is I think that's what it's sort of implying, but not really said. But again, I love the costumes of them. Look lived in, look much more realistic. For all that it's fantasy, and they have stuff in their hair and all that kind of silly stuff, but that they look, all those costumes look old, like they look like they've been worn for a long period of time. They look lived in, which that's something I really like. So yeah, the scenes with Arondir we've kind of covered a little bit. Very, very good. Digging the trench, and that was interesting. And the actor who's playing him, tremendous screen presence, fantastic. He, as you said earlier, he's really, really carrying the show. Absolutely, he is. But really, really like him. I think we need to see more of him, and hopefully, if the producers take note, anything in the future, they'll probably put more on that actor. But we shall see. Galadriel, yeah, again, too thinly drawn. What are our motivations? What's going on there? Hopefully, when we get back to Middle Earth, we'll see a bit more of that. We'll see, so marks out of 10 for that episode. I'm going to give a 6.5, probably that. So it felt very much like a bridging episode.
Yeah, I mean, I felt because I didn't give a rating. I mean, I originally was going to give that a 7 as well because it felt like a stronger episode in the immediate aftermath of watching it before thinking. But it's a 6 out of 10 for me. And I know that's being generous.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I know that's being generous.
Yeah.
That's the problem that this series is facing with people that are giving it ratings, is that they finish it and go, yeah, and then they think about it. And then when they think about it, they think, well, oh, actually, hang on. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. Well, this bit doesn't make sense. Well, why did that bit happen? And then suddenly you end up giving it a lower rating.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I think I was at a 5 first, but then after I thought about it, I was like, no. Like, there's a lot of, like you said, Jack, there's a lot of post-episode sort of reflection that actually brings it to light and makes you actually think that excitement wears off and eventually you're left with what you're left with.
Yeah.
Well, it's now the same then as the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit longer than the theatrical version, isn't it? And halfway into Two Towers, and we got nothing. I don't even know the storyline at the moment. I know the story, what they're going with, but to me, it doesn't feel like a storyline. And it's just.
I think that's the thing. We know what the story is. I just don't recognize it.
There's not a quest. There's not an obvious quest or anything really.
It's because of the writing, and
yeah.
when you spend $1 billion on something, I'm going to use an analogy that Rich, you might not understand so much because I don't think you're a big football fan, but Hamish and Trev, you will. Man United, yeah, Manchester United are a global powerhouse financially, right?
Yeah.
Shit recruitment, shit back staff. They've not performed in nearly 10 years now. They haven't won anything significant. They spend all this money on making the team look great by buying all these superstars, but behind the scenes, it's just a total shambles. And this is kind of what Rings of Power feels like. It's like they bought like the premium franchise of fantasy, the original, the OG.
Yeah.
And they haven't even bothered to think about the story. They haven't thought, okay, well, we've got the whole Second Age. Yeah, let's condense 2,000 years worth of history into 30 years and turn it into a storyline. Everybody will love it. And then it comes to actually telling the story, and they're like, well, it will just write itself. But it isn't, because they haven't bothered to invest in having a serious writing team that needed maybe 2, 3, 4 years to actually really flesh it out properly. And they've just not done that.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't feel, if they have done it, they've done a terrible job.
or the lore expert left.
Yeah, well, yeah, Tom Shippey stepped down, and they sacked half the writing staff as well. Just after Christopher Tolkien died, and the angle that they were going at originally wasn't Rings of Power at all. I think they were going to do something to do with Aragorn's ancestry, so Stories of the Dunedain, which Christopher Tolkien had signed off on.
Yeah,
and then he died. And then
I didn't realize they actually sacked the writing staff. That is never a good sign.
Yeah, half the team had gone, and then Tom Shippey moved out, and they're all probably under some sort of legal requirement not to speak out about why they were.
So who is actually the showrunner? Is there actually like a name who's actually?
There's two guys or two names that I think are the main or the lead writers, and Simon Tolkien is like a consultant.
That's great. As I've said before, my granddad was a printer, and Rupert Murdoch hasn't rung me and asked me for any advice about how to run a newspaper.
Yeah, they totally dropped the ball with it, and they've openly said like that they don't care. They this is a story based on it, and like this is their version of it. Is they want to reflect the real world as well, and it's just like,
Well, they
can't
want to
we
reflect the
just
real world.
focus on the story.
They want to reflect. Middle Earth should reflect our world, right? Until you put Harfoots in grubby outfits with fake Irish accents and upset the Irish, and then suddenly, oh, it's just a fantasy world.
Yeah, exactly. Until it suits them. Right. Shall we go on to episode 4? Episode 4, where I've pretty much lost the series. Rich, because I think you've got to shoot soon. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, first of all, we really must talk about Adar or Adar, because great performance. Great performance. I actually thought they'd done something really clever and actually recast Lee Pace, as a different character. I thought, oh, that would be fucked up, just to literally cast him as like an evil elf. I thought, and I thought, deliberately, just as like a different character but the same actor. I thought, but no, it's not. It's just a guy who kind of looks a bit like him. But I thought that was going to be something really, because that would be an interesting thing to do. But the first thing I thought when I saw him, now I know you guys aren't super familiar, but there's a band from Norway called Mortis or Mortis. It's double I. Where the lead guy literally dresses up pretty much like that guy with like the funny nose and the ears and stuff, and he really does look like. It's a guy called Horvad Elfsson, and he absolutely, that's what I thought. But his performance and his line delivery was fantastic. I want to see more of him. Absolutely loving that kind of creepiness and sort of weird way of speaking, a very elliptical way of speaking. I really like that. And I know you were concerned, Jack, about evil elves. What? This is just appalling. But its performance, I'm kind of, I'm sold on it.
In the lore, there is only one elf that can be. In the lore, there is only one elf that can be. And that's Maeglin. Yeah.
But I was thinking about something, but I think I may be misremembering it from another book, that the origin of the orcs weren't they something like, maybe misremembering some of the series about them being tortured elves?
Yeah.
No, they are.
Yeah. They were. I remember reading that and I thought, is that in the lore? I couldn't remember that the first orcs were elves who were tortured and deformed and terrible things were done with them just to make them evil or something.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether he's meant to be one of them, maybe.
I think he's Maeglin, and I think Maeglin is the dark elf that he wasn't really an ally of Melkor. He didn't serve Morgoth, but he was duped and blackmailed and threatened into betraying Gondolin.
Yeah.
The fall of Gondolin was brought about by him because he was in love with Turgon's daughter, who was the High King of Noldor at that point.
But certainly very interesting character. So that's the storyline I really enjoyed. No Harfoots in this episode. So obviously lower tier for me straight away. Hopefully they'll have an all Harfoot episode next time. So looking forward to that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so far I'm really enjoying it. This episode certainly more than the previous one, because there's a bit more action, a bit more stuff happening. So I was a bit more sort of enthused about the sort of what was happening. I liked the scene with the where the leaves of the white tree start to fall. That was interesting. So, and the scene about like hints of Sauron, and like some of the men haven't, that old dude hasn't forgotten him and stuff like that. Who's kind of like a sort of like an old sort of Nazi type. Oh yeah, we still remember the good old racist days, don't we, son? That was the kind of vibe I got. It was, Hitler's coming back, mate. You and me can go. What? It kind of got that vibe. I liked that kind of. That was, I think, it's the Arondir storyline is the most interesting one at the moment, definitely. And I'm intrigued to see where that goes. So I will say, as a very brief recap, certainly better than episode 3, if only for Adar and his kind of strange way of speaking and sort of, because his sort of, I just like the character and the line delivery was fab. Because unlike a lot of the other characters, you want to know more, and what's his motivation? Where's he coming from? He seems to be hinting at all kinds of motivations and things, and he's obviously incredibly cruel because he offs that orc and sort of like strokes his head as if he's nice and then just guts him like a fish. So that's real Game of Thrones type level of grimness. So hopefully we'll see a bit more of that kind of carry on. But yeah, that was a much better episode, stronger. So I am going to give it a 7. There you go, a 7.
Wow.
It's a low 7. It's a low 7, but still a 7.
I agree with your summary of Adair is fantastic. I mean, it's translated to father, isn't it? So that might play into it somewhere. It'd be interesting to see what happens. And I like that he had a tear in his eye as well when he put that orc out his misery. So it's like, I don't know, there's a depth there, and I'm quite excited to see where that goes. Again, in episode 4, that's my favourite thing about it was him and his interaction with Arondir. I thought that was fantastic. But then, for me, this episode lost me majorly. All the stuff in Numenor, I said a lot in the last segment, but nothing's changed for me. Numenor, all that stuff is just boring. I don't enjoy it. I don't like many of the characters there. Galadriel and her stern face and how horrible she is, and like she's thrown in prison, then she goes and sneaks up to this man's bed like while she's ill. And it's
Assassin's
like,
Creed style.
yeah, it's like what are you doing? You're meant to be this fairest, tall, like brainy elf. Like, what are you doing? What's going on here? And the whole I didn't like the rallying of the troops at the end, like everyone putting their hands up, even like the old women putting their hands up. It's like, are you gonna go war with the orcs? Really? It's like everyone putting their hands up. I just felt so unrealistic. I don't like the Trevor reminded me his name earlier, the bearded Numenorian bloke. If one of you
Arizona.
Oh, Chancellor Pharazôn Palpatine.
Oh my god, Farah's. Oh, honestly, like if you can force attention and force some sort of like conflict there, they're trying too hard because it's just not clicking with me. Like I really don't care about his ambitions or whatever the hell he wants. I really don't give a shit, and that's really irritating me, that arc. And then
Oh, you're not gonna be happy later on, mate.
one minute you got like they're banishing Galadriel, then the Queen sees the petals fall, then suddenly they've called Galadriel back, their savior, and then, oh, it's like, no, please. And the dreams about Numenor and the Palantir, about the wave crashing into Numenor, I don't think there should have even been a thing like
No,
till much later. It shouldn't.
that bit was so good.
For
You know, when
for the casual fans, I don't think this should have even been a possibility that Numenor's going to fall or crash or anything. They could have had a different reason for them to help the elves. Like, that's all I'm saying about Numenor.
You know that bit with the dream sequence at the beginning,
Yeah.
and she's got that baby. If you watch that really closely, obviously it's not her baby, and she's like stood there in the window. But if you look behind her while Numenor is drowning, all the women have run away, including that baby's mum. Like the mum hasn't gone back
Just
for her
fucked
child;
off.
she's just tipped out the door.
Oh my god, I didn't notice that. I've watched it twice.
Yeah, I watched it the other day. I was like, is that
Oh my
really?
god.
I mean, obviously it's a dream sequence, so it's a
Yeah.
tiny little nitpick, but it just made me laugh.
I thought it was so ridiculous. In this episode as well, I was quite disappointed at the end. Like I was saying earlier about the scale of things, we've got about 40 humans or 50 humans in this tower, and it's meant to be like the Southlands, and it's like surely they could have had a little city or something. It's like the orcs are going to attack this place, and they're like worse than the Rohan farmers. Like
Well,
they look like they got less chance of defending themselves than those Rohan farmers in Helm's Deep, and it's like, what's happening?
parts of that tower are falling down, like the doors are like all broken, and I'm thinking that tower was being maintained by elves. Like, were they not? Did they not think that door's broken? Oh, we
Yeah.
won't have time. We won't have time to fix it with our immortal lifespan.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that whole thing's really annoying me. I wish we'd have seen hundreds of humans all like bleeding and you know, Arondir, I feel like, as I know it's for the story, but realistically, why didn't he go to his kin? Why didn't he go to Elrond and Brindle? I can't even say his name.
Celebrimbor.
Celebrimbor.
Yeah, why couldn't he go to him and rally some troops? You know, something like that, rather than basically going to his death. Like,
Who, Arondir?
yeah, because he's gone. I know he had to send a message.
He's got to save the woman he loves.
Yeah.
And she'll lead that. That'll be Siege next episode or the episode after, and she'll lead the valiant defense. And you'll get some rainfall, and she'll unsheath the sword and be like, their armor is weak below the elbow or below the armpit or something like that. It just will be.
It looks like Helm's Deep, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does.
Well,
It looks like the Hornburg.
It literally just looks like a tower and an attached wall, and that's it.
And but also, like, they're refugees fleeing their villages, but none of them thought to bring food except that one guy who bought like 5 potatoes.
So let's send the kids. Let's send
I'm
the
not
kids to get
sharing
us
them.
more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like I bet they're gonna have 50 orcs attack, and it's just gonna be so underwhelming. And I don't know, the orcs can surely dig underneath and come up that way if that's what they're alluding to.
I can't look at Adar as anybody other than Benjen Stark.
Yeah.
I mean, he just looks like Benjen Stark. Even he's wearing all black, so Benjen Stark. And then even when he's like all like melted on one side of his face, it still looks like Benjen Stark later on in Game of Thrones when he's all melted.
Yeah.
So,
when you said that to me in the chat, I watched it again, and you completely ruined Adir for me. I really liked him, and then every time seeing him, I just go. Then I remember how much better House of Dragon
Game of Thrones.
And
I haven't seen it yet, but he's still an intriguing character, and I'm still pretty, I'm still pretty looking forward to finding out a bit more about him. If he's Maeglin, I'll be like, oh, for God's sake.
But
well, then
with everything, with everything I've said, the episode 4 for me is either a 2 or 3. Like, it's really lost me. Like, I can't even talk about the sets anymore because there weren't even any decent sets. It's just gone off on a tangent, and Arondir is really, really holding the fort for me, as is Benjen Stark. They're both holding it for me at the moment, and I hope in episode 5, it doesn't go down to 1 with Galadriel training the Númenóreans. That's all my take on it, and I'm gonna let Trevor go first, and then Jack, you can give me your slatings.
Are we gonna break down some of the other bits after as well? Talk about the characters.
Yeah. We can go through the characters. We can do a sort of extended chat after.
Extended edition.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this was a really odd episode, and I found myself wanting it to end sooner than it actually did end. I was just like, I've not felt like that watching a program before for a long time. It was painful. If they'd already, they've already created this Galadriel and taken a hatchet, and in this episode they took the hatchet to Elrond. I mean, it was that was probably the most painful thing for me, was the Moria storyline. I hated it.
I forgot about that as well, but you're probably going to say all my bugbears, so carry on. Sorry.
I mean, Elrond sneaking around, and Elrond inventing Mithril. Oh no! It's like, guys,
that breaks canon so hard as well. I mean, it really breaks canon.
But it's just that there's this attempted deception going on between Elrond and Durin and that, and it's just like, what's going on? It's just like, why is Elrond sneaking around, and why are they forgiving him for sneaking? Because he saved a couple of dwarves' lives. Oh, it's just awful. I hated it. It's just sort of Detective Elrond. I'm
the gadget in theme tune.
Yeah, I am leaning towards You know, when the Fellowship are outside the door, and it's like obviously they're talking about speak, friend, and enter, and
Well,
Gimli says something along the lines of "they were better times." I'm thinking now that they're putting a twist on that, and it's just sort of it's a dig at the fact that the elves were meant to be friends. So that's why Melon is the password, as it were. I don't know. It's just that sort of why. There's
elves,
no.
elves are selfish wankers anyway. I mean, throughout the whole of the Silmarillion,
Shut up, you dwarf lover.
they are.
I
They used to hunt the dwarfs before they figured out that they were sentient beings capable of holding conversation. They actually hunted them for no reason other than that they were just short, stumpy fellas with long beards.
Yeah. They really, for me, destroyed everyone's character in this because I was really looking forward to seeing the Moria stuff. Disa, I think, is again fantastic character. The characters they've created, I think they've done pretty well with Disa, Arondir, Adar. I think they're characters that are flourishing in ways, whereas the existing characters or the characters with lore, they're butchering. The whole Numenor thing. Do you know what? Obviously, Galadriel sort of beating up 4 Numenorean guards was awful. But the thing that made me laugh was she snuck up to the King's Tower, and there was this brief, I don't know, 5-second scene of yes, my father's ill, blah blah blah. I'm looking. You get the impression she's looking after her father, but then she just completely abandons him because she's got to talk to Galadriel. And it's just like, yeah, don't worry about that guy.
Yeah, and he's dying as well. She's like, we cannot speak here. And it's like, but you can. You're at the top of a tower, and there's 3 of you, and he is on his deathbed.
Yeah, and he'd probably be quite. If it was Galadriel, the Galadriel we know that was there, it would be a nice thing for the king to have in his presence in on his deathbed. But I wouldn't want this Galadriel anywhere near me. And then there's the whole argument about sort of I know more about Palantir than you do, and it's just like, oh please. Oh,
yeah,
please.
My dad's bigger than your dad.
Yeah, I mean, I can get it from a Muriel point of view that she's like, oh, these are Palantir and you should be careful with them. But it's just sort of, bitch, please. I'm descended from the creator of them. We know what the Palantir are. And I'm certain sort of she mentioned something about there being more Palantir than there actually are in lore as well. Because obviously the Palantir were created to create that watch. I can't remember what they called it. The 7 Sons and their guard around Angband, isn't it? I can't remember the name, but it was their way of keeping in communication with each other. It came out of the episode feeling very weird, and it was so down the middle of the line. It was just like, for anything they did that was good, they also did something that was really bad. And this episode for me is a straight 5 out of 10 because it's like got good bits, but it's equally got bad bits. And I
think there's quite a few Palantir.
No, I only think there was 7.
I thought there were 7 of them. They even
no, you're right. For some reason, do you know what I was thinking? I was thinking Norns for some ridiculous reason.
Yeah,
there's 7, but they're different sizes as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously they've been around a long time.
But they were made in Eldamar by Fëanor.
Yeah. So I despaired, and I say I was anxious for the episode to end. I wanted it to end because I'd had enough.
Yeah, I think I messaged you while I was watching it, didn't I? Being like, oh, thank God. Oh, wait, no, there's 20 minutes left. And you were like, yep.
Yeah, and I'm bitterly disappointed. I'm finding myself sort of coming at this hard angle of this is pretty bad. I don't want it to be. And I think I did message you, or I might have been in our group chat, sort of saying I was last weekend. I was gardening, and it's like going, would I still be watching this if it didn't have Lord of the Rings attached to it? And the answer is probably no. I'm only watching it. I'm only watching it now to the end because it's Lord of the Rings. But they've done a very, very poor job with it, and I'm disappointed.
Yeah, 100% with you there, Trev. I totally forgot to mention about the dwarves, and I haven't got anything else to add to it apart from what you said. And I was really enjoying the dwarf and seeing Khazad-dûm, and I was really enjoying that until Ithrir or Myfra. No,
My Frau,
Mithril.
no, it would be Mithril. A new ore. It's not a new ore. Like, it's thousands. It's as old as Arda itself, and the dwarves know what it is already, and so do the elves by quite some margin of time.
Yeah.
And the fact that Elrond's father is Eärendil, who they mention in this episode, and they talk about him becoming the night's the star at night.
Yeah.
Literally flying a ship made of elven glass and mithril. Like, it's like, and then I think we all agreed that they're going to destroy Khazad-dûm by the end of this series.
I think it'll end. I think it'll end with the Balrog being released.
Khazad-dûm and Numenor. They're going to destroy the lot.
Yeah. Well, they're destroying Numenor anyway. That has to happen. Khazad-dûm doesn't fall until like 1670. Don't quote me on that, but it's like 1670 in the Third Age. So this is at the tail end of the Second Age, which is thousands of years long. So we're going to miss out on thousands of years more of history of Khazad-dûm if they decide to do break-off series, because by the end of the Second Age, they've destroyed Khazad-dûm nearly 2,000 years early, which means that there's only 30 years for Moria to become ridiculously rich on the mithril trade that they find. 30 years.
I think that as well. I think they're going to go with the fall of Khazad-dûm, which would be a great shame. I'd like to think that they're looking in the Palantir and they're seeing some sort of future of the Balrog or something. I don't know, like some sort of future. I don't know.
One of the things, because by the trailer, it looks like they're going to introduce a ring next episode, and I'm just like wondering, with the dismal look that even the elves have got towards Galadriel, how Galadriel is going to end up with a fucking ring of power. I just like, what rationality are they going to have? Like, just like, well, let's give one of these to Galadriel.
She's going to moan and complain and fight her way into getting it, like she has done the whole series.
Well, they've just I've seen some defense of the Galadriel character online. A lot that the people that really like Rings of Power are aggressively liking Rings of Power, and the people that don't like Rings of Power are aggressively hating Rings of Power now. But it's irritating because everyone's going, oh, well, did you know that Tolkien actually wrote that she had a tempest in her, that she was actually quite an angry person? It's like, yeah, 4,000 years ago. You know, this is she's almost 6,000 years old now because it's the end of the Second Age, and she has spent well over 1,000 years living in Doriath with King Thingol and his wife Melian the Maya, who was one of the wisest Maya there ever was. And she's come out of that time knowing nothing. She doesn't know how to behave in court. She doesn't know how to speak to other members of royalty because she is herself royalty. She doesn't inspire any form of leadership in people. And that's becoming a problem already. So how is she going to end up with a ring? Because she's just looked down on. They're not. They've disrespected. What they've actually done is they thought they've given her a character arc here that everybody will identify with, but they've given her one of those two tropes that you see now with modern writers towards female protagonists, and it's either that they're either ridiculously intelligent and very underhanded and play behind, or it's the downtrodden. Nobody's listening to me. I'm just completely misunderstood, but I'll tell you I'm going to be right in the end and I'll become more powerful. That's what they're doing. There's no depth to her other than that. It's one-dimensional. Her entire ethos in this whole series so far has been about revenge. It's not about protecting elves. It's not about protecting all that is good. There's no showing of any emotion from her other than anger and scorn. There's no care. And you know, they're saying she's supposed to be quite prideful and she's supposed to come across, you know, as a little bit of elven arrogance, and you know, she's supposed to be a bit restless because determined to stop Sauron. if you compare her to Boromir in the Fellowship, Boromir is very similar. You know, he's
Yeah.
written very similar. He's very prideful, and he's very you know, he has temptations. He's a mighty warrior. He's a great leader of men, leader of armies, commander of the armies, son of the steward, basically almost royalty in his own right. But his character arc is completely different to Galadriel's in the way that he's written, because everything he does is about how much he loves Gondor. It's about how much he cares for his people. It's about how he's prepared to sacrifice everything that to defend his homeland, and how it's by the blood of his people that everybody else's lands are kept safe. And although he does fall to temptation of the ring, you still feel love for him. You still care about that character, and you identify with that character. And they've missed the plot there with Galadriel. What they should have done is that bit when she's with Tar Palantir, you know, Tar Miriel's father, and he's on the bed. She should have touched him and tried to take away his pain, and used her magic, and used the power that she has. That would have been more identity. That would have shown that she cared, and that she was like, I'll see what I could, you know, just something like I should. Well, obviously, I couldn't write this because I'm not a very good writer either, but neither are the writers of this show. But they could have just been like, I will take his pain, and then she like holds his hands, and maybe there's like a glow or something that gives like the effect of a glow, and she just heals him, and then you go, oh, do you know what? She actually does care a little bit.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry about that rant there, Trev.
No, that's all right. And also, it touches upon something Hamish said last time about magic, and we need to talk about that because it's just like we haven't really seen any magic, have we?
We've seen the sword that catches fire.
Yeah, still no major magic.
Yeah.
So, Jack, what would you give episode 4 if you want to go over it quickly?
I want to say 5. I think it's staying at 5. I'm not in. They've really, you know, this whole like reimagining of characters. Well, we're reimagining it, but why? Nobody asked you to. Nobody wanted you to. Nobody ever said up until Rings of Power, do you know who needs to be reimagined as a sulky brat? Galadriel. That's what we really need. We need a sulking teenage brat on screen, and we need to see that because we don't see that in our daily lives anyway. Yeah, it's going to stay at a 5, but I think it's going to get. I haven't got anything to add to this episode more.
Yeah.
You know, I think you've covered it. I hate the dialogue. Isil.
Yeah.
Isil.
Isil. There's no need for it. Oh.
I detested that the moment it came out, and being aware, so having watched the Men in the West video where they picked up on the use of language, especially when Tolkien made such an effort with the language, and that it's just
he
don't
created
need
languages.
that modern talk. You don't need that modern talk, and it's just sort of like I don't know.
He was Tolkien was a poet and a professor of language, like literally a professor of language, who created 21 languages that you can speak fluently, just for his stories, and they can't even get the dialogue correct. I think that really, really, really winds me up.
Yeah.
And the other day, somebody wrote in one of the Tolkien groups, I mean, well, at this point, bad writing is just a dog whistle for racism. And I was like, oh, fuck off. I was like, seriously, fuck off. You can actually criticize a program that has a diverse cast without actually worrying about the diverse cast and that being the effect. Because so far, the diverse cast are the best out of this. They really are. And that's not for me to discredit the non-diverse cast. I think a diverse cast is just diverse, but not to discredit the cast because they're doing the best they can with what they've got. But Tar Miriel, for me, I think she plays it very, very well. And Arondir is an incredibly strong character, but it's not a dog whistle for racism to complain that the show is really badly written. And the timeline's off again. Sorry, I'm going to go on another rant here, but how long has passed in this? How long has passed in this series so far?
I got
20 minutes.
Well,
it's difficult.
It's about a day, isn't it? It's about a day.
Is it? But how
probably
the
about a
dwarves
week.
and the elves managed to build half a tower then?
Yeah, but then Galadriel's barely said 2 words in Numenor.
Well, apart from that, she's
going
to have a ship. She's in charge, really. She'll go to the king. She'll do all of this. But they've already built half the tower that they're trying to build for the forge in Eregion.
And you didn't even see the dwarves building it. It's so annoying.
No. But you get but that can't have happened in 3 days.
No. I think it's just that sort of they didn't appear in the last episode, so we're letting that have that passage of time. I think they're going to do this with the Half-Foot story. They'll be arriving at whatever their destination is because we didn't see them in episode 4.
But didn't they tell Galadriel she had 3 days? I thought they told Galadriel that she had 3 days before they were going to kick her out of Numenor.
Yeah, but they're probably thinking they're being really clever and it doesn't matter, or it's just like it worked for the season 1 of The Witcher that they was in different timelines. I don't know. I mean, it's just that sort of they're I suppose they're expecting people to not ask those questions and to just go with the storytelling. But
Yeah,
I feel
let's not ask Tolkien fans to go with not ask questions. They don't need to ask questions. They've got all the answers in the books. This reflects the books perfectly. It's better than the PJ. It's better than the Peter Jackson trilogy by far. Look at how much lore they've got in it.
yeah, stop gatekeeping, you Tolkien fans. You
Yeah,
guys read the books.
They simply
bloody
don't give a
purist.
shit. They simply don't give a shit. They don't care. They don't want to. They just want to make it, for me, about social politics and world politics today, rather than actually have a compelling and good story. That's what I've heard.
I mean, if you was going to shorten Isildur's name and you wanted to make a dig at him, you'd call him Duh, wouldn't you? Like Duh, Duh. I mean, just that sort of. I mean, the whole reason for creating nicknames more often than not is to get some sort of jibe in, isn't it? So.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still. Oh,
it's horrible. It's so cringy. Isildur's a pretty sick name as well. It's like a cool name, and
yeah,
to shorten it, it's a fantasy name, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think of all the Fellowship, we try to sort of, I don't know, creating nicknames for them. Frod, all right, Frod, Fro, Fro,
Ara,
yeah,
Ara.
Obviously, they call Pippin Pip, and then we probably
Ara, Gan.
Yeah, Gan, old Dolby.
I mean, it's just like obviously nicknames do exist because, what I say, a few of them. Mary is a nickname, isn't it? I mean, they do exist in, but it's just mainly they exist in from thinking off the top of my head, Hobbit culture.
Yeah, it's just a touch with modern audiences, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, I'm calling it, by the way. Galadriel is going to chop Sauron's hand off in the Battle of the Last Alliance.
No. I wonder if they'll put her in there though.
Yeah, instead of Elrond, I reckon.
I would like. We need to see her mellow out now. I can't believe that I thought. Do you know what? I just didn't think that. I never thought that by episode 4, I'd be cringing so much with Galadriel. It's not fair.
Yeah.
You know, the character that we've all loved for decades is now just this. And I know they keep saying that the way Tolkien wrote it, but that's in the First Age. It's not. They don't have the rights to that either. So they've just. Yeah, I'm going to stop moaning about that.
She's just a generic fantasy character. Right, just to keep us on track. Do you guys have anything else you want to add, or
Can we talk about what we like? Because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I know this is coming across like I hate it, because I don't hate it. I'm flabbergasted at the bits I don't like, but the bits that I do like. You know, I love the way the orcs are portrayed. I think that, they come across really well.
Yeah.
I do like the dwarf. What's going on with the dwarfs? I don't like what they've done with Elrond and the dwarfs. I would rather it was Celebrimbor. And I said that in the last one. I'd rather it was Celebrimbor that was doing this, but I am still enjoying. I'm enjoying the familial moments that you get with Disa, and that song was beautiful that she was singing, to the rocks to save the dwarf miners. I thought that was really fantastic. Yeah. I liked the bit running through the woods, but I was confused about how Bronwyn managed to find Arondir and Theo in the middle of that forest. She just appeared. And then
storyline, bro. Story, bro.
She's got plot armor, so that's fine for
now. Yeah. I mean, Arondir did get that Legolas moment, didn't he, where he caught the arrow? That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
And the orcs turned into vampires.
And he actually ran out of arrows as well, which you never saw in Lord of the Rings. Legolas never runs out of arrows ever. Never show him going and collecting arrows. He just has like an unlimited Lothlorien sheath of arrows that never runs out. But Arondir actually does. And I'm loving the orcs. I thought Adar, although I did say that he was Benjen Stark and had a little bit of a laugh, I did think that was, it's nice to have a baddie that you can see apart from the orcs. It's nice to actually have somebody go, oh, right, okay, this is the guy, and then people will, maybe they've done it deliberately to focus him on being Sauron, but I'm pretty convinced that Sauron's an Eregion anyway. We just haven't seen him yet. Have you seen all the criticism of the Warg? When they fight the Warg?
CGI.
Everyone was like, it's shit CGI. I was looking at that and I was like, that's pretty good CGI.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
For a TV show.
I thought it was pretty good CGI. The design isn't good. I don't like the design. The design is very much like it's like Crash Bandicoot had sex with the hyena in Lion King, and that's what's come out. But it does look real. I thought it looked real. It just looked really strange. And I like Elendil. I think Elendil's great. I would rather he was a lord, but I do think he's got a good persona. He plays it quite well. I feel like they've deliberately shrouded him in a little bit of mystery because you can't really tell if he's pro elf or he's anti elf, and it could be that he's guarding or keeping secret the faithful. It could be that the faithful are they're banished to the western part of Numenor, and it could be that as Elendil is supposed to be, he's the son of Amandil, but his father is the leader of the faithful, and that's where Anarion is right now as well. He's out in the west, and that's where Isildur wants to go. So it could be that Elendil's actually there playing a little bit of intrigue. And Pharazon's very good. I liked Pharazon. I feel like that bit where where he breaks up the crowd, as it were. He's like, drinks on me. That when they're all like, they took our gerbs, they have that proper like Trump rally about how much they hate elves.
One elf.
That one elf, that's gonna elves are gonna come over in abundance and take everyone's jobs. But that felt like Pharazon had actually staged that on purpose to gain favor with the crowds. You know how he sort of made this big speech about how great the men of Numenor actually are. And I thought that's good. That's in keeping with Pharazon's ideology that the men of Numenor are superior. But then he was like drinks all around, and just suddenly all these women come out with wine. And then he hugs the guy. He gives the guy that was giving the speech, the guy that got absolutely laid out by Halbrand and the other one. He hugs him. So I was like, yeah, they've definitely staged that. Like that's been a deliberate ploy to curry more favor with the masses.
That's a way to look at it.
Yeah, well, it's a good positive spin on it. It's I'm not interested in the political intrigue of that part at all, unless they grab me with something.
You'll get quite a bit of it because that's quite lore heavy.
I do have a positive to add, and this is for episode 3 because I should have mentioned this earlier. Anytime a show creates a bit of dialogue that creates a meme deserves praise. That group you invited me to, Jack, is it Shirefolk?
Yeah,
it's just like in the aftermath of episode 3, you just see all these memes coming up, sort of, you've earned a water ration.
That was great.
And it was just like group. Yeah, and it was just having like things like when Sam sort of plunges into the water at the end of Fellowship because he's going to go with Mr. Frodo, and Frodo sort of pulls him out or whatever. But it just they've like put the orc's face on top of Frodo, going, "You've earned a water ration." So they created something meme worthy. So they got to get praise for that, surely.
I like how every time Elrond and Celebrimbor speak, you get some good lore. You get some proper Tolkien moments there. I know you don't really like. I don't like Elrond's coercive behaviour down in the mines. How he goes sneaking about, and then Durin turns up and asks him, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And then he turns it on him as if to be like, "Well, you're hiding something from me." But, well, bro, you don't just get to go walking around someone's country and just poke holes wherever you like when you're a guest. Like, you don't get to do that and then flip it on the prince of that nation and be like, well, you're hiding stuff from me. That's not. And they keep banging on about the friendship, and I kind of just feel like that's a little bit forced. But I do actually like Elrond, and I'm enjoying Elrond's. I wish he was somewhere else. I prefer it if it was Elrond in Numenor, and Galadriel was sort of pulling the strings in a different way, or if Galadriel was, as you say, Trev, if you just replaced Galadriel with Celebrian.
Yeah,
you would have it would be so much better, because then you can be like, oh, it's Celebrian. We don't really know much about Celebrian except later on in the Third Age, but they don't. They've just decided to rewrite the playbook with Galadriel, and I don't know. Yeah,
they want the strong woman leading the show. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, but I mean, like I say, with my Celebrian sort of replacement, they could have done that because you got a blank character pretty much.
Yeah.
Someone who's a bit headstrong. Yes, well, that would tie in with the fact of what happens to Celebrian in the Third Age after she's given birth to Aladan, Elrahir, and Arwen. That would have worked better, I think.
They should have just made this a dwarf story and given it to Disa. I mean, really, like she's carrying every scene she goes into. Like, did you know
she's
that
fantastic.
the actress who plays her actually wrote that song that she sings? I think she
Yeah,
actually said
wow.
that, yeah, she wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
she's
why did
brilliant.
they give Durin daddy issues?
Oh.
And why did they put it in the 4th episode when the 3rd episode is called Adar, which means father? So why didn't they stick that in the 3rd episode?
They're making the dwarf human.
It's. I mean, I don't know. Let me say something a little bit controversial here. They've gone for diversity, which I support. However, in the going for diversity, they've watered down all the character in the races so that there is no real diversity. It's.
Do you mean by the way they've humanized it?
Yeah, it's just that sort of elves are distinctly different to humans. Dwarves are distinctly different. There's even like you were saying about sort of the middlemen, the low men, and the high men. It's just that sort of there's nothing that makes them
different.
Yeah, there's nothing that separates them. Even Hamish, when you're saying about the costumes, it's just like it's all similar style, and it's all just sort of the only race that. Well, I mean, the dwarves are considerably different, and the Harfoots.
But they're all displaying the same emotions and the same emotional approach in every scenario. Yeah, it's all, I guess I know what you mean. There's no differentiation in the way that they culturally approach things. Like there's no stoicism in the dwarfs. It still feels like, like Durin going down and being like, I hate my dad, and then like later on he's like, I'm with you, my son, forever. And it's sort of like that's nice, but like you didn't see the argument, you didn't understand the row, you have no idea really why Durin's pissed off other than that her mine is being closed.
And then at the end of the episode, it seemed like that was nothing. It was a front, I felt, because obviously there's a whole. We need to find out what the elf is up to, whatever, and it's just that sort of. I don't know. Is Prince Durin playing both sides, or is he just sort of fobbing Elrond off, or what? And it's just sort of. Like you say, it's just you don't go into someone's house and like
sneak about,
yes, and sort of abuse that sort of trust in the way that Elrond did.
Yeah, and say that he doesn't care what's going on in there, but then asks what's in there.
Yeah, eavesdropping. I mean, God, Gandalf should have suddenly appeared to drag Elrond back by the scruff of his neck.
Well, he's told him not to tell anyone about the Mithril, and then given him a piece of Mithril.
Yeah.
It's all daft. Right. Yeah. So shall we call it a day on this one?
Yeah. We'll talk about magic.
We try to be positive, but I think we've just about said all the positive stuff.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm very much with Jack. It's just that sort of. I don't want to just be slating it, and yet it's hard.
It's hard
to be positive about it.
Hard. We're all sort of in the same camp of we like Arondir and we like where that's going. We sort of like the dwarf stuff. Like it's okay, and I just don't think none of us like Numenor, and that's the centerpiece of the story, sadly. And the Harfoots were gladly forgotten about in episode 4.
Now, I've got a theory for why the Harfoots have been introduced or have been included in this page, because say when I met Simon Tolkien, because I fitted carpets at his house. Yeah, let me just drop this in. I remember talking to my colleagues, that's like sort of saying it's just because he's an author in his own right. You must imagine that whenever he submits a book, that the publishing company go, "Well, this is great, this story you've given us, but where are the hobbits?" And I feel very much like this is the attitude that's been taken on creating Rings of Power. It's just like, we have to include hobbits in some way or another, otherwise people will ask, why aren't there hobbits here, or we've got to include them. It's almost like the old Orange adverts you used to get at the cinema, where sort of people would pitch their movie ideas, and the Orange guys would go, oh yeah, but he's holding a mobile phone, right? Or they'd just sort of add these ridiculous additions to the movie premise just to include Orange mobile phones. And it's just sort of, I don't know.
It just feels like it's a lot of, we did it because we could, not whether or not we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been more up for having like Harfoots in the Southlands sort of thing, and just create, if they're creating new things, and just do that, and then have them fight alongside the people in the fort. It would feel more fantasy like, and then they can retreat and end up founding the Shire or something. I don't know, just something more interesting in what's going on, really.
Yeah. I also wonder if, like I say, they're just, Numenor is going to head directly to the Southlands, and Elendil and Arion and Isildur will start creating Arnor and Gondor.
They've got 30 years to do it. 30 years to set up 2 massive kingdoms and create a breeding population that can stock 2 massive armies that can fight Sauron.
Yeah.
They really should have done this the way I said ages ago, which is each season is 100 years long, and then they condense it that way, because Numenorians live hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So all you do is, oh, well, we have to kill off a few characters, like a handful of characters. Most of the main characters are going to be Numenorians anyway, so you get the same character for 2 or 3 seasons. Oh well, people don't really want to see characters dying off all the time. Well, yes, they do, because we love Game of Thrones for that reason, that no one is safe and more realistic.
Yeah, that's
And so they should have done that, but they didn't. No, what we'll see in the next episode is Galadriel will be training the army, and then you'll have Bronwyn training her little army, and then later on, a couple of episodes later, the orcs will turn up and lay siege to that tower, and then, just as they're about to lose, the men of Numenor will come and save the day, and then that'll be that.
Like they're meant to
failing us.
Yeah, and then right at the very, very end of the series, at the end of season 1, Celebrimbor will introduce Anatar to Elrond. Celebrimbor will introduce Anatar to Elrond, and then that'll be it. And then we'll all know. We'll be like,
there you go.
Elrond.
Do you think that's going to be it then? That they will introduce Sauron? I mean, Anatar.
Yeah. Fuck it. Man United is shit. Man United is shit at football. Lord of the Rings is nowhere near as good. Well, Rings of Power is nowhere near as good as Lord of the Rings. My childhood has been turned absolutely upside down on its head. I had it really good up until The Hobbit, and then since The Hobbit, everything's just gone fucking downhill.
Well, I think that's a perfect place. I think that's a perfect place to stop. That's a perfect place to call it a day.
Let's get out of here.
Well,
yeah. No, I do want it. I do want it to be good. Like, I really do, because I really do love Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. I really do, and I desperately want them to improve this.
You know, we started off positively. We started off, oh, this is okay. You know, setting the scene. Let's hope it goes somewhere, and here we are.
We lost Rich. We lost our vein of positivity.
Yeah.
The small vein.
2 hours later.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for anyone listening. We've enjoyed talking about this. This conversation cracks me up. Oh,
the
sorry.
sea is always right.
Down with Numenor. Anyway, we'll be back with episode 5, hopefully next week, and then so on. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.